it's funny that somebody said that. I said, it just means she's here by herself. She was doing the camera work and.
Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our public safety meeting. And can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Shriver?
Here.
Placido?
Here.
Kalinowski?
Here.
Roman? Barron?
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 1st Public Safety Committee meeting?
Second.
Any corrections, additions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And now I'd like to call on our Police Department, Chief Kelly, for his report.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, so I want to do something just a little bit different for just a couple moments, just sharing a couple of bits of information with you that I've received just recently. We all know about all the major issues going on in our country revolving law enforcement and police and so on, but there's a couple that relate to our public safety here in the community that I just wanted to share with you, and I promise to be very brief. But just some information about the questions being asked about our criminal justice system. Is it broken? Do we have to be tearing it down and building it back up? And just some statistics I think you'll find very interesting. We're first going to look at the time period from 1960 to 1990. And during that time period, the population went up by almost 13%. But in that time period, the violent crime in our country went up by 152% per decade, every 10 years. And the murder rate was going up by over 28% per decade. Isn't that amazing? And that's what that looked like on a graph. And then a number of things happened in the 90s, early 90s, involving policing and the criminal justice system, and we tried to do some things differently. And the changes were pretty dramatic. During that time period, the population still continued up at almost the exact same rate in the United States. But look at violent crime going down significantly in every decade, and the murder rate for those decades, the same thing. So the map, the graph that looks like this for 1970 to 1990 suddenly looks like that in the years after that and leading up to today. And the significance is when you look at these numbers up here, that's 758 per 100,000 in 1991, and that's 365 per 100,000 in 2013. Now, if you do a little bit of quick math, that just tells you that the crime rate went down. It was cut exactly in half during that time period. So when you look at that time period, you see that during 60 to 1990, violent crime went up by over 455% and murder by 84%. Now that's the rate that it was going at until certain changes were made in our society. And then look what happened from that time period. Down, violent crime down by a total of 44% and homicide rate down by almost 50%. And here it is looking at it a slightly different way, the graph and the numbers. And the numbers here on the right, again, are per 100,000, and you're seeing the dramatic difference in the likelihood of becoming a victim of those crimes. 2010 to 2013, the numbers still continue in the right direction in both violent crime and murders. And here's the bottom line, basically. In 2013, there were 769,000 less violent crimes in our country. And the amazing number that just blows you away is in 2013, there were over 9,000 less murders that occurred in our country. So obviously, I tell you about this because obviously something in our criminal justice system is working well. Obviously something is taking us to a point where we are much safer as a society than we were just 20 years ago. And what this means that you and me and our loved ones are almost 50% less likely to be a victim of violent crime than we were in the 1990s. Now, if you ask the average citizen out there, you know that they don't know this information. They don't know how much safer we are as individuals because of changes in our society. They're probably thinking it's much more dangerous than it was 10, 20 years ago, but the facts are exactly the opposite. To put it another way, that in 1990 you were twice as likely to be a victim of murder or violent crime as you are today. That's really amazing, isn't it? And some people say, well, okay, that's fine for society, but we know that a lot of the issues relate to our minority community, and things aren't going so well with our criminal justice system. Well, we all know we need to do things differently and we need to improve. But there are certain things that are going well. Because, again, looking at that same time period, 1960 to 1990, murders in black Americans went up from 4,300 to over 12,000 during that time period. Isn't that amazing? Yet, it's been turned around since 1990 to 2013, going down from over 12,000 down to just over 6,000 a year, in a reduction of almost 50% during the same time period in our minority communities. And what that means, and this is truly an amazing statistic, that last year there were almost 6,000 less African American citizens died from homicide in the United States. And obviously this is an important fact because we care about protecting all of the citizens, and this is just an example of what's going on. So I just wanted to share those statistics with you because while all of this is going on, all of this rhetoric is going on at the national level, obviously changes that occur either there or at the state level will impact on our public safety here in Abington and all the other communities. And so there's going to be information like this going to be getting out. You're going to be seeing more and more of it out there. But I wanted to make sure that you saw it first and knew what was going on and the information that was going out. And that's all I have for you on that this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for the Chief? Did you have a further report for Abington, like local things that you wanted to do?
Madam Chair, there's not a whole lot that we had. There's been a couple of different events that are going on. Our 24-hour relay challenge is coming up. Obviously, we've just begun the month of May. That means that next month we'll be starting our June traffic blitz like every year. And those are the two main things we have coming up for us that we want to report to you this month, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll start with our regular agenda. PS1 is a motion to adopt ordinance number 2096, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 28, Special Purpose Parking Zones, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments from commissioners, staff, or audience? Whoa. It's really cold in here. I know. It's a little warmer than I walked in. But it is cold.
In a nutshell, my comment was...
You have to come.
Can you come up to the microphone,
to the podium.
please? Are you all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Name and address, please.
I say I could have done that more gracefully, but didn't. See what happens when my tech guy is missing, and thank you for asking. I am fine. The only thing I wanted to say is I think that a little bit more about that item was down below as to what those referred to, and I was just going to ask if that could be up above. In other words, the particulars of where those applied, the item that you just did. So...
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Oh.
What is going on? What is
So in this particular ordinance, this applies where? And I think it was below in the documents that you could scroll down to in the agenda.
Yeah.
But when people are looking on the agenda, they wouldn't know, and all the people that are listening on the TV don't know where it applies. So if it were possible to put, and maybe you could say just now for those who are listening on TV, to just put where that applies, where you are planning to focus this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Hearing none, all...
Mr. Shriver? I think it's worth pointing out, we do post these board action sheets on the web with that have all the information, so.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS2 is a motion to advertise ordinance number 2099, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, parking prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, parking prohibited except certain hours, no stopping or standing, and Section 28, special purpose parking zones, for adoption at the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners on June 11th, 2015. And I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from the commissioners, staff, or audience? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And PS3, acceptance of bid for purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus. This is a motion to authorize township officials to award a bid to Whitmer Public Safety Group of Coatesville, PA for purchase of 80 NFPA 1981-2013 compliant MSA self-contained breathing apparatus. Whitmer's bid amount is $451,040, no cents. Any questions, comments? Oh, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Staff or audience?
So this is for 80, and is this for a fire, or is this for an emergency with hazardous chemicals, or could you explain a little bit more about where 80 uses of these breathing devices would, they're like 5,000, 5,500 apiece, where they would be needed and what kind of situation?
Yeah, I'll ask the staff when you sit down. Does anybody want to, Fire Marshal, do you want to talk about that?
Commissioners, those air packs are used by firefighters in all kinds of hazardous atmospheres, be it a fire, be it a hazardous materials incident. Maybe it would help if I just read this statement.
Excuse me, Chief, could you use the microphone so we can hear you better? Thank you.
Is it on, Commissioner? Can you hear it? Okay, I'm sorry I wasn't sitting close enough to it. The air packs are used in any hazardous atmosphere that the firefighters may find themselves in. I think that probably answers the resident's question. Let me just say that in July of 2014, this board accepted a 2013 Assistance to Firefighters grant in the amount of $440,000. The grant was approved for the purchase of 80 self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBAs, commonly referred to as air packs. Right now, the Township Fire Department has 120 air packs, all carried on the department's apparatus. Once you approve the acceptance of the grant, the chiefs of the department, and some of them are represented here this evening, if there's any additional questions, the chiefs of the department formed a committee to evaluate at least 4 manufacturers of air packs. The Committee of Firefighters met separately with each air pack manufacturer. Some, if not all, of the manufacturers left a sample air pack with us. The sample air pack made its way to each station and was evaluated by the firefighters in that station. The fire chiefs then drafted specifications for bidding purposes based on the firefighters' evaluations of the air packs. This project took over a period of several months. In early 2015, the chiefs, after completing their research and developing specifications, asked that the Abington Township Fire Department advertise for bids for the purchase of 80 air packs. The bids were opened on March 26, 2015. Bids were then reviewed by the chiefs. After a careful review of the bids, the chiefs determined that MSA SCBA was the only SCBA that met all of the specifications. Therefore, the chiefs are recommending that the bid be awarded to Whitmer Public Safety Group for 80 MSA SCBA air packs in the amount of $451,040. The 10% match and the additional $11,040 over the grant award will be covered by the individual 5 fire companies. Are there any other questions?
Did the chiefs want to add anything? No. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Klein.
I just had a question on the purchase justifications that you have here, page 1 and page 2. And then on page 2, there's 2 companies that were, actually there's 3 companies that were less expensive, and I guess that's because they didn't meet the specifications of the bid?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay.
There should be some additional pages behind those pages that lay out the deficiencies in what was missed by those manufacturers.
Yeah, the one sheet I just couldn't read. It was too blurry. So, okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Klein, we, in addition, they're not only did they not meet the specifications, but after our office reviewed it, their bids were defective.
Okay.
So they could have been disqualified for either reason, but they did not submit compliant bids.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our agenda. Are there any comments from commissioners? Audience? Oh, go ahead, Officer Freed.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. Like the Chief said, next month is June, so it'll be the time for the traffic blitz. I just wanted to remind everybody that the yard signs are ordered, so if anybody needs yard signs, they should be available in about 2 weeks. They're going to contact the Traffic Safety Office, and we'll be glad to get those out to you.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Yes, so the thing that I wanted to bring up as a matter of safety is I would hope that by now all of you have read the $5 million lawsuit that was levied against Abington in reference to the colonnade. What I don't know if you noticed was in there a specific statement that said that they would have sought a level 1 code. And we talked about this at public safety several times, and the safety factor of a building that had black mold everywhere, that had, wires damaged and so on, behind those walls, level 1 does not allow you to go behind the walls and fix all those things. And the people that are coming in, the new people that will be renting or eventually possibly purchasing in that building that's being renovated now, are going to be their safety is going to be dramatically affected by how that's done. This lawsuit shows you how what the mindset has been, all the things that we keep bringing to you as issues of safety, not just for the residents that we're departing, but also the attempt to not fix the safety issues for the people coming in. I can't imagine the kind of response that we got with documents, made difficult to get and with answers that were not forthcoming. And by now, I hope all of the commissioners have done some due diligence on this. I think the reason that the MOU was pulled, this is my own opinion, was so that you all hadn't approved it and were complicit in it. It clearly was not, there was not a code that was being followed. What the complainant says regularly is that you didn't follow the MOU we don't care about the code. And that is, and that's paraphrased, that's not exact. But in other words, he's saying that he believes the agreement was to follow the MOU and not to follow the code. And this was brought up to you many times, and we got no answer. So this is a huge public safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.
And now, call to order the May 6th, 2015 Public Affairs Committee meeting of Abington Township. And let us start with the roll call.
Commissioner Spiegelman?
Here.
Schreiber?
Here.
Here.
Here. Our friend Commissioner Farron is excused. Let us start, as always, with the approval of the minutes. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the April 1st, 2015 Public Affairs Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections that I ought to know about? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. All right, minutes are approved. Now we have a number of interesting guests making equally interesting presentations tonight. We are going to start with Director Doug Wendell of the Parks and Recreation Department with his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, Director Wendell.
Just a couple of minor items. Sandblasting for the pools has been going on, and they've already finished Pembroke as far as the sandblasting is concerned. And they're working now at Crestmont, and they should be getting everything repainted hopefully by June 1st. That was the contract, and it looks like things are moving along pretty nicely. The other thing is, not many people may be aware of it, but this time of year during this entire week, the Montgomery County Senior Games are going on. And for those, anyone who's 50 years or older, that now includes me for quite a while, if I wasn't volunteering, I'd probably be enjoying them. But throughout the southeastern portion of Montgomery County, Upper Gwynedd, Cheltenham, Abington, Upper Dublin, all those communities, all the recreation departments volunteer their people to work at these events. Usually they're up at the Montgomery County Community College, but a lot of them are spread around. Some are in Masons Mill Park or Bucks County, Bucksmont or Indian Valley. They're all over. So if anyone's interested, it's a little late to sign up this year, but it's a lot of fun. There's darts, swimming, golf, stationary bike, pickleball, for those of you who know what pickleball is. There's all kinds of other activities that you can get involved in. It's a lot of fun, and if you do so choose, if you get a gold medal, you can move up to the I guess it's the national games, which I believe are held either in Shippensburg or at Penn State. They flip-flop once in a while. But if you're interested, you can always go on the website, Monco Senior Games, or get in touch with any of your local rec departments, and they'll give you the information, and you can get involved in it. It's better than sitting around doing nothing. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is better than sitting around doing nothing. That is great. Is that going on? Is that just this week, or does it continue into next week?
It's only this week.
This week, okay.
It's this week, but it's in 20 different locations, and like I said, there's probably 30 different activities, and they're all different levels. It's mostly for fun. Some people, the horseshoe guys, are pretty serious. They get real serious. And
What is pickleball?
Apparently is a very serious game for some of these guys.
We want to know what is pickleball.
I know, but I'll pretend I don't.
Pickleball is an adaptation to tennis. Instead of using a strong tennis net and a rubber, air-filled rubber ball, you're using a plastic wiffle ball type of item. And
Not a pickle, actually.
No.
I don't know why I don't know why they call it pickleball. I'll have to find out. Because Andy, my assistant, he's actually one of the people on the committee. But you use a wooden paddle similar to what you would do with paddleball, and it's a tennis net, only it's on a smaller scale, and it can be set up in a parking lot or a field anywhere you can get the bounce on the ball. And they have tournaments. There's a number of teams. Warwick has a team, and they're all very. They get serious as well. I mean, but there's a lot of people out there just do it for fun because it's not quite as strenuous as tennis, but it's still pretty quick. It's a fast-moving game, and it's easy to set up anywhere. It doesn't cost a lot to set up. Equipment's cheap.
Can we find out? Can we just, by a show of hands, how many people wanted to know what pickleball was?
How many people knew what pickleball was? I've heard it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, wait a second. Can I ask a question?
Commissioner
more
Klein
impressed
has a
by the
relevant
second
question.
group.
Well, I think
I'm
you guys,
impressed by the second.
I think you guys are concentrating on the wrong things. We're talking about pickleball, but did you say it's 50 years and older?
Yes.
And they're doing stationary bikes?
Well, yes.
Okay.
We
I couldn't get
finally
past that. I didn't even hear pickleball.
Your time, the bikes are set at a certain tension, and your time, and you have, at the end of that time, they measure how many miles you walk.
But they're stationary bikes.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's a bike race I can finally win, although Commissioner Klein will actually be eligible a little bit before I will, but we'll try out the stationary bikes. Doug, thank you very much. That's very interesting. We'll make sure we get the word out next year. That's really that's a fascinating program.
I didn't want to let you down. You have to sell that nice stuff in the beginning.
We get rid of the bike lane study.
Maybe you can talk to them get the actual bike.
We actually have a township master stationary bike plan. It's a very good plan.
And it's $10 to join it. So
That's awesome. Director Wendell, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was edifying and entertaining. Now we actually have a very special guest.
Could we just ask the Parks Director a question about the parks?
At the end, you can ask. There's a section for general. There's a section for question and answer. Excuse me, for public questions and comments after our one agenda item. But then at the end, there's a general. So you can absolutely ask him at the end of the committee meeting. Where was I? Oh yes. So we have a special guest, someone I think we're going to be seeing a lot of in the weeks and months and years to come. The chair of our EDC, our Economic Development Committee. Wait, it's committee or council? It's committee, right?
Committee.
And proud to say, a Ward 11 Highland Farms neighbor, Mr. Doug Callentine.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Spiegelman. It's nice to be in front of you all again. Many years ago, I stood in front of this Public Affairs Committee for my service on the Library Board, and reported on our activities there. And so we're going to talk now about economic development activities. Sorry about that, Chief. That's part of the violent crime here. But first off, thank you. I have been on the Economic Development Committee for about 2.5 years. Recently took over as chair of the committee, I guess about June of last year. And we are making some progress, and we want to, on a regular basis, update you on the progress that we're making. Last fall, we had a retreat, and we reported on the results of our retreat to a group of you in early January. And at that time, we committed to come to public affairs on a regular basis. I don't know how frequent it's going to be, but maybe at least quarterly, I think, whatever the invitation might be.
Time goes very quickly. It seems
right.
Quarterly seems frequent.
But some of the areas of progress that we made and came out of our retreat, the strategic planning retreat that we had last fall, were a number of different areas. One of the things we wanted to do was identify the target corridors within the township that we really felt needed some economic stimulus. And they're pretty obvious. You've got Old York Road, you've got Easton Road, and you've got McKinley are the three primary arterial streets that we focused on in that meeting. And further, we broke those corridors down into sections. And rather than try to accomplish everything on all sections of those roads, we focused on 3 sections. So on Old York Road, kind of the Noble Rydell section where the commercial development is down there. Also on Old York Road from Susquehanna up to the Edge Hill Bridge. And then the third area that we focused on was Easton Road, basically from Susquehanna up to the Willow Grove Park Mall. So I'm going to talk about those 3 areas tonight and what we've done in the last couple of months, and start with the Easton Road sector. And one of the things that had occurred there, and Commissioner Schreiber, feel free to jump in at any point here where you'd like to support or add any comments, we found that the businesses were a bit disjointed, and that they had not really coalesced together and tried to figure out how they might help one another and help the community along that stretch of road. So with the help of the Keswick Village Business Association, we had a first meeting in January, and we have had subsequent meetings every month since January, and made a significant amount of progress. We, for the first 3 or 4 meetings, the staff, myself, a couple of other Economic Development Committee members kind of led the meetings and directed the meetings. At our most recent meeting, in I guess it was, the end of last month, we actually have 5 officers that have volunteered, who are local business people, to basically create and run this Roslyn Valley Business Association. And they have initiated a number of things already. They are putting together a website that's going to advertise the various activities that are going on in that along that corridor. And interestingly, in one of our meetings, we talked about on the calendar the number of things that occur during the course of the year. And I think we were all surprised. There were, 6, 7, 8 different events. And just simply letting people know that those events are out there on a website, keeping them posted will be great. We organized a spring cleanup. Ed Michelow with the Public Works Department organized community service task workers. They did I think it was on April 25th, did a complete cleanup from Susquehanna all the way up to the Willow Grove Mall. If you've driven down that street, Wayne, Lori, you can tell us, I think it looks a little cleaner than it did maybe before that. So that was good progress. We still think there's a long way to go. The business owners want to see an ability to maybe enhance their business activity, either by working with each other or having these certain events that are advertised well enough that they'll get residents to come and participate in those activities. So, first corridor. Second corridor, in this Old York Road north to Edge Hill Bridge, we focus specifically on the intersection of Old York Road and Susquehanna. Commissioner Spiegelman and Jim Marshall and the staff have been pretty active with a number of the business owners over there, landowners and property owners, in trying to create an environment there where we can enhance the parking behind the Vintage Restaurant, maybe get some acquisition of some of those properties. There's some effort going on there now to understand the values of a couple of those properties, whereby maybe there would be an opportunity either through township funds or grants, and there seems to be a fair amount of grant money available, that maybe we could start the acquisition process to put together a better corner than what we've had. I guess that was the traditional heart of Abington when you look back probably 100 years ago with the toll gate and everything else that was along that section of the road. More to come there, but good progress being made. And again, if you'd like to add anything, or Jim, I'll be happy to take any comments that you have.
More to come.
More to come. The Noble Station area and that whole Fairway Plaza recently was the focus of the Montgomery County Planning Commission on a walkability audit. What that effort is leading to is a series of focus group meetings, or I guess one focus group meeting with a series of participants, whereby we can start to gather some information, survey the local business owners and residents in that area about what they would like to see from a walkability standpoint. That train station is an important train station. The ability to walk in that area is pretty difficult. You've got the Old York Road traffic issues. You've got the Fairway issues. They're looking at scheduling a meeting for either late May or early June in which they would invite roughly 20 people in 2 groups of 20, so it'd be 40 people in total, where they'll discuss concepts and ideas and try to advance this whole concept of walkability in that particular neighborhood. There's also quite a bit more, I think, to come in that whole Noble section, but those are the things that we're working on immediately at this point in time. Recently, we had a presentation from Penn State Abington on their new student housing project. It was just an introductory session. We had a good understanding, as many of you have and as many of the residents in the area have had. But now we want to spend some specific time with them talking about what the economic impact, positive or negative, and our sense is it will be positive, but the economic impact on the community. We have scheduled our next meeting, our June meeting, for an evening meeting so that the public can participate in this review process, whereby we are expecting to receive not only another presentation from Penn State on the student housing project, but also some information on an economic impact study that they have conducted so we can have a better sense of how we will benefit from the construction of this new facility. The public in that case will have an opportunity, they always have an opportunity, our meetings are open to the public, but this will be an evening meeting where they'll have an opportunity to see how we deliberate, how we think through these issues, and hopefully come to a conclusion that makes sense for the township and its residents. Another thing that we've done with Penn State recently is through the Abington campus and through their University Park campus, they are looking at creating what they're calling an industrial partnership, whereby they would set up at 5 of their satellite campuses around the state, around the Commonwealth, a series of, for lack of a better term, innovation-type centers. And they've selected Abington as one of those, and they're now surveying what the opportunities might be. We had a good session. A number of you on the commission did, in fact, participate, as did staff, as did our committee. We are waiting for kind of next steps, but I think the bottom line, good news is that Penn State is a good resident of the town and is looking at not only trying to improve certain corridors of the town, but also trying to improve the opportunity for businesses in the community as well. A couple of other points, and then I'll conclude and be happy to respond to any questions. One thing that we've started to do in the last few months is ask a few of the major property owners in the community to come in and talk to the Economic Development Committee about what they're thinking, what their plans are. We recently had a presentation from the Huntington Valley Shopping Center owners, Craftco, about their plans for what they're doing over on Huntington Pike. We haven't scheduled, but we are looking to schedule probably either in late summer, early fall, have the Willow Grove Park Mall people come in, have the Rydell Park come in to understand what their plans are for the Rydell Waters site and their timing for that. We have a list of about 12 different major property owners that we will invite in over the course of time and hopefully get a better sense of what their thoughts are, what their plans are, and perhaps give them some direction that could be beneficial to the township. Finally, EDC open seats. We have 2 current vacancies on our Economic Development Committee. One that has due to a resignation that occurred last fall, and a second one that occurred as a result of the recent passing of Jack Thalheimer. And I'll come back to that in just a second. But we, at our meeting yesterday at the Economic Development Committee, after having had a vetting process where we looked at 8 different candidates, interviewed 5 of those candidates, recommended to the EDC, the full EDC, 2 candidates for consideration by the Board of Commissioners. Yesterday, had a letter prepared, sent to the President of the Board of Commissioners for your consideration that will, I guess, occur perhaps this month, at least hopefully this month. The 2 candidates that we have recommended are both residents. One is a woman by the name of Randy Elton. She lives in the Roslyn section of the township. She comes to us with 2 of the 4 credentials that we've been looking for. What we're looking for to have on our committee is a composite of people that combined have at least 4 attributes. One would be like a regional planning, urban planning background. 2 would be real estate experience. 3 would be financial analysis experience. And then 4th would be grant writing. In the case of Randy Elton, she has both the regional urban planning experience with an undergraduate degree from Arizona State University in that background, and then also has done a lot of grant writing in her various positions in townships in this general area. We've checked her out from a reference standpoint, came highly recommended from one of her previous employers, Moreland Township, so we feel pretty excited about her. The second candidate that we're recommending is a gentleman by the name of Mike McPaul. He lives in the Brentwood section of the township. He's been a resident for some 20 years. Mike has a real estate background. He is a CPA, so he has an accounting background as well, so can help us on the financial analysis side as well as the real estate side. Mike presently works for a company in Center City, Philadelphia, Rubenstein Partners, which is a large real estate investment management organization. And a little bit of full disclosure, Mike and I worked together for 17 years when I was with a real estate investment management company here in Philadelphia as our chief financial officer. So I've known him for a long period of time. 2 very qualified candidates. I hope that you'll find that to be the case when you review their information and approve them, because we would like to get back up to full strength. Finally, I'd just like to, again, recognize the fact that Jack Thalheimer passed away about 10 days ago. Jack was a good friend, a good colleague of the Economic Development Committee, and also led that committee for 22 years. There was a reception on Sunday that I know a number of you attended, but we will miss him, and certainly he and his family's in our thoughts and prayers. So with that, happy to respond to any thoughts or comments or questions you might have. And
any Commissioner Gillespie.
Just one thing, thanks. When is the evening meeting? I really miss attending EDC since it's 7:30 in the morning, and I have another meeting that morning anyway. So
I know that meeting. June 2nd. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned
so
that.
it'll be the same. The first Tuesday.
The
first
June
Tuesday.
2nd,
Okay.
First Tuesday at 7 p.m. in this room.
Love that. 7 p.m. Okay.
It's unfortunately the exact same night as the Highland Elementary spring concert, but that's nobody's fault. I don't hold that against anybody. Commissioner Hecker.
Just wanted to make a comment. As one of the commissioners who's been participating on the subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee, I've been incredibly impressed by the energy, the passion, and the work that's taking place. I think under Doug's leadership, there's a renewed vigor and a vision and a focus. And although he's not here tonight, I think Commissioner Markman has done an outstanding job as the board's liaison to the EDC, and I think good things are going to follow. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good comment.
Very good.
I actually would also like to echo those sentiments exactly. Being a member of that subcommittee, attending those meetings, really has been very exciting. I mean, I think all of us involved, and I think everyone, as we see things unfold, are going to be really excited about the positive changes that are going to be coming, that are going to be great for every taxpayer as well as, frankly, every resident, every consumer in our township. And Doug, I really do want to say, not just because you're a Ward 11 resident, but the energy that you've brought to the EDC is exceptional. I also want to throw out a couple of other thanks. Working very closely with Assistant Township Manager Tara Waymeyer, much appreciated all that you've been doing for the subcommittee and with working with EDC in general. And my colleagues on the board, Commissioners Hecker and Sanchez, and I'm not going to say anything nice about Commissioner Markman in front of him, but he's not here, so I can acknowledge him as well. And also, there's someone else. I can't see the name. Mateo. I think he's something in code enforcement. He's sort of been helpful. One person I do have to point out, Jim Marshall, who calls me 6 or 7 times a day. The fervor and energy that he has brought to the subcommittee and to EDC in general cannot go without acknowledgement. So while he really does call and text a lot, he's brought fantastic ideas and vision and energy and really great sort of three-dimensional thinking about things. So it's appreciated. And Doug, thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
And now, once again, someone who's gotten pretty decent screen time tonight, Chief Kelly is going to present on an item that's of relevance to PA1, the PAL site presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will only be doing a small portion of this presentation, Mr. Chairman, so you'll get to see some of the other members that are sitting here in this row as we talk to you about what we think is a very important step forward and hopefully the fulfillment of a dream that's been going on for over 30 years. All of our job in government and certainly in the police department, we try to help people, and especially those who are in need or those who are at risk, right? That's what we all do. And the second thing that we do is we work to make our community safer and better. And a number of years ago in the early 1990s, we saw just one startling statistic that helped redirect a lot of our work in the police department. And this showed it in this particular graph. It just shows you that the age group 15 to 25, that in that age group, a tremendous amount of the crime that goes on is done in that age group, and the advice that we were getting back then, and it's still true, is that police departments need to focus more of their energies on this age group and diverting them from crime, not just arresting them. And as a result of that, we got involved in some different programs. We got involved in the Citizens and Police Together. We got involved in the Abington Community Task Force and numerous other youth-related programs. But then about 2001, it became obvious that we needed to do something to help get involved with working directly and personally with our youth. Our Parks and Recreation Department does such a great job at providing opportunities like that, but this was something a little bit different to try to provide the help and direction and guidance of the youth. And as you can see from our mission, the Police Athletic League utilizes community-based programs and activities and mentorship and community service opportunities to keep children and families involved in a situation where law enforcement officers and volunteers work together, displaying a positive image through the good role models. And that's really what the genesis of our Police Athletic League really was all about, and we've been attempting to do ever since then. And now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Gargan, who's one of the driving forces behind some of our youth programs and our Police Athletic League, to just tell you very briefly about some of the things that are currently going on. Melissa.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the programming that we do at the PAL Center. Before I get started, as it won't work, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the membership of the PAL program. I have the privilege of working with the staff in community policing, with our officers, with our PAL staff, and our PAL youth to coordinate the programs for more than 450 registered members between the ages of 11 and 18. And 450 does seem like a lot. I will say that consistently, on average, we see 120 every weekend. It's a lot of kids. It's a lot of stuff to do. And I couldn't do it by myself, so I'm grateful for them. So Officer Gillespie and I are just going to give you briefly some of the activities that we do with our PAL kids that they've come up with on their own and that we've come up with working together in community policing, both on-site and off-site. As you can see here, this is a list of some of the on-site activities that we do while we're there. I'm not going to go through them all, but I am just going to mention one. And I alluded to it when I first started. PAL Council. PAL Council is a program that I initially started more than a year ago. And this program consists of myself, 2 of our PAL staff, and a volunteer, and our PAL members. They get together once a month. They talk about what's going on in the PAL program, what changes they'd like to see made, what programs they'd like to participate in, and what trips they'd like to take. In addition to that, they're also involved in the planning process of it. I will tell you that they have been very enthusiastic and grateful to have this opportunity. They take a lot of pride in what goes on at the PAL Center because they have a say about what goes on in the PAL Center. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Officer Gillespie.
Good evening, everyone. I have the opportunity to talk about some of the fun activities that we as the police officers get to engage in with the kids at the PAL site. One of the things up there is the basketball tournaments, and it is cops versus kids. And one thing that the kids really love is to play against the police officers and beat the police officers, which they do repeatedly. We let them win. The other thing we did was a dodgeball tournament, and it was the police officers against the kids. And again, they would have won if Ronnie Griffith hadn't saved the day. Next week, we're going to be bowling our police officers and our PAL kids against Philadelphia PAL and their police officers. And we lose every year, but this year I have high hopes. This is that one sport where being old and being a couple pounds overweight is actually an advantage. During the summer, we do a PAL Police Academy, which is sort of like our Citizens Police Academy we do every year, but we do it for kids. Commissioner Hecker's son was part of my class last year. We bring in our K-9 unit, our SWAT members, our detectives. They come in and they talk to the kids about different things that police officers do. And then every day at lunch, the police officers that are working come in and they'll have pizza with the kids and have lunch with the kids and just get to meet them. The kids really, really loved it, really found it interesting, and we have a great time doing it. I know it's something that doesn't need to be said, but since I have the microphone, I'm going to say it anyway. With all the things that we see on the news today, the opportunity to get into the PAL site and have these basketball tournaments and have the kids meet the police officers and get to know them as people as opposed to uniforms is really invaluable. And not only that, it's invaluable for the police officers, especially the young officers, to have that interaction and get to see what it is, the most important thing that police officers do. And it's not arresting bad guys, which is fun. But the most important thing is having the opportunity to have a positive impact in somebody's life, especially a child. And the PAL Center really, that does that for us. It gives us that opportunity for them to get to know us as people.
Thank you, Officer Gillespie. So I don't know if you all noticed, but on the on-site and off-site activities, most of them are recreational. Having the opportunity of having our own building would open us up to more educational type programs, and I'm just going to ask Lieutenant Warner to come up and speak about that.
Thanks, Melissa. Good evening, everyone. This is the really exciting part for us, because we do a lot on Friday and Saturday nights, but how cool would it be if we were open on an ongoing basis every day, every week? There's an area that we have touched on in the past with educational programming. Grab that for me, because I'm technically not quite with it. Where I could get some education. But some things that we can't do all the time is we can't do a lot of educational programming. A full-time PAL site would allow us to do that. And we were kicking around this earlier today, and one of the things we said was, you know what, on a Friday night after working all week, I don't want to be tutored on Friday night or Saturday night. I want to go blow off steam. I want to go have fun with my friends. That's kind of how we are as adults. However, if we're in a routine where we have something available during the day, where there is a tutoring, where we have ongoing mentorship every night, where we get youth teaching youth, adults volunteering and teaching youth, I think we really could tap into something here. And that's really exciting for us because we've talked about a lot of programming and we've seen what other PAL centers can do, and that they do. Unfortunately, we're sort of held back. But in addition to that, there's another area we can tap into, health and wellness. Again, bringing in police officers every day when they're working Monday through Friday, stopping in. They get to see the police officer, learn from the police officer. It's a connection that we haven't been able to do consistently. But if we had our own site, we might be able to achieve some more goals and probably things that we haven't even considered yet what we could do.
Thank you, Lieutenant Warner. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Doug Wendell.
Good evening, everyone. The plan you see up here is a plan that was developed from the middle of about 2006 to the middle of 2007. And the board had authorized us to go ahead and start working on this plan, so we went and formed a committee with the residents in the neighborhood, and we had at least 4 meetings with the residents. During those 4 meetings, the residents explained what they wanted. We worked with Land Concepts to develop this plan. And Land Concepts has done other plans for us before, and they're very forward-thinking and gave us some great opportunities, and there were some changes made. And every time there were changes, we discussed these with the residents. The residents discussed what they liked, what they didn't like in the plan. Land Concepts went back and checked on it and changed it around. So by the end of the 4 meetings, what we came up with as a group was the plan you see on the screen here. One of the main things that the neighbors wanted was what they were calling at the time a cultural center. They wanted some type of a building that they'd be able to go to and have neighborhood activities go into. As you see there, there's really no other building there. It's all open. And there was an opportunity for senior citizens, for the kids in the neighborhood to play basketball in the winter or to do classes, a number of activities that would have helped having a building. That was, again, something that the residents had asked for. And as you see it here on this plan, it was put into the plan, and then back in, I guess it was of May of 2007, the Board of Commissioners approved the plan. So the plan was approved both by the residents and by the board. The plan was also paid for by HUD, and that one of the reasons why the building has not yet been constructed was due to the fact that there has not been any funding. And one of the things that the neighborhood had wanted to do was to do it so that they could run it themselves, but a lot of the leaders were not able to raise the money for that. So right now the plan, as you see it here, is what we are working on. We've already done a number of improvements that the plan has suggested. The one thing that has not been done yet was the building. So this does lend itself very well to having a building on it. There's where you see the skating pond is where we would suggest it, where I would suggest that it goes. There has been work done to deal with some of the runoff issues a long time ago, and so that's been dealt with. And I think that the neighborhood would really appreciate it, and not only would, as Lieutenant Warner was saying, get to have the kids in PAL use it, but it would also be a neighborhood event. They would be able to use it for themselves during the days and the times that PAL is not using it. So, was there any questions about the development of the plan?
Just a question about what are we looking at, assuming that everything moves through as far as approvals smoothly, what kind of time frame would you be looking at? Well,
I think it really depends on a lot of code enforcement issues. We have to make sure that everything is acceptable for what we plan to do or what PAL plans to do. And I think that really there's financial issues. I think Eric's going to talk about that. And so a lot of those issues will be discussed later at this meeting right now.
Mr. Sanchez.
It's probably early days, Doug, but when it is built, it would be nice to see a lot of sustainability features built in, things that could also educate the kids, sort of the obvious ones that are like when they have gray water and things like that, stormwater stuff that the kids can actually see while they're at the building so that they start to get in this mindset, recycling.
Solar panels,
that type of stuff.
Minimal use of electricity, minimal use of water, all those type of things.
Exactly.
I'm sure that the engineers who develop it and the committee that will be working with them will make those suggestions.
Great.
Let me hand it back to the chief, and he can keep going on with this.
Thanks, Doug. And we'll be discussing answering some more of your questions, I'm sure, as we go along.
Is it okay, Chief? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I feel one question from Commissioner Klein.
Yeah, I had sent an email. I guess Chief Kelly might address this, but I would be interested to know if somebody's looked at the zoning issues and what is ahead for the project as far as zoning approvals.
Absolutely, Commissioner, and thanks to you bringing that to our attention. We have looked into that, and we'll be talking about that in just a minute. If that's okay, we'll move right into that, okay? But we do have that lined up in our presentation here tonight. And about a year ago, the township was fortunate enough to get a person working with the township to do the community development work who not only lived in our township, but is doing some amazing things. And he's taken this project under his wing and has done some of the work developing the issues with the community and the community groups. And we're going to let him talk to you for just a minute about the work that he's been doing on this project. And there will be time at the end for any other questions so that anybody might have. So let me turn it over to our Director of Community Development, Van Strother.
I wasn't going to answer the question. Actually, what are we doing? Is there any other answers to the question, or is that coming up as far as the zoning issues?
It is coming up, Commissioner, and we have it actually as part of the presentation. Thanks to you bringing it up in just a moment, if we can do that in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. My name is Van Strother, and I am standing before you as the president of United Neighbors, which is the group that worked with Director Wendell back in 2007 to develop the plan. Advancing forward, recently I started working with the POW organization and the chief and the great members of the POW organization to bring this project to fruition, or to bring it before you tonight. In my work, what I started to do, I brought it before the United Neighbors, talking about the plan that was approved back in 2007 and asking for support for a POW site to fulfill the plan that is before you tonight. United Neighbors voted unanimously to provide a support letter for this application. Then after that, I went before the Willow Grove NAACP and made a presentation to the membership, and the Willow Grove NAACP also unanimously will support this project and will provide a written letter for the support of the POW Center being located at Crestmont Park. After that, I did talk to the near neighbors on Reservoir Avenue. It's the bordering street up top of the plan, and then also on Rubicon Avenue, which is the other neighboring, and they also are in support of the project. And, having said that, I also talked to the neighbors on the back side of the property, where my home is. My residence is there for 24 years, and I've talked to a couple of my neighbors, and they wholeheartedly see a POW at the Crestmont site as an asset. So that's my presentation. There's support from the near neighbors, the organized groups in the area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Van. That certainly was helpful in knowing that that was moving forward with it, and it's really something that's really sought after. This is a picture of the site pretty much the way it is right now. You'll recognize down at the bottom of the picture is Old Walsh Road, and you'll recognize the retention basin there that doesn't have water in it usually, but of course water's put in at the end of in the winter for the skating rink. And this would be somewhat what we're proposing it would potentially look like, using the parking area that's currently there, the building, and repositioning the retention area there or somewhere else on the right in the immediate area on the property. So obviously, if that should become a reality, and these are just some very quick sketches on what it could potentially look like. We're not saying this is exactly it. These are just obviously renderings to give some sort of a concept of how it could look along Old Welsh Road. And this directly now comes to your point, Commissioner Klein, and the steps that we see happening. Step one is a preliminary board commitment that we're asking for at Thursday's Board of Commissioners meeting on May 14th. That preliminary commitment is just, as you will see, the very first preliminary step that has us able to go forward, that says, okay, the township is agreeing that if all these other things work out and are met, that the PAL would be able to go ahead and start working on that project. Second step we anticipate would be a formal agreement between the township and the Police Athletic League that would describe exactly what's expected on both sides about the PAL being able to use this land for this particular building. The third step is the development of an engineering plan. Obviously, that's going to answer a whole bunch of the questions that we can't answer for you tonight because obviously those things come with an engineering plan. Some might say, well, why haven't you gotten that done before we've gone this first step? Obviously, there has to be some degree of commitment that there's going to be the ability to do that before the Police Athletic League spends a lot of money on developing the plan and so on. The step four is especially the one that you were talking about, Commissioner Klein, where we come for zoning approval. And part of that would be getting a use variance as part of the process of getting the zoning approval. And assuming that it works out, and then it would be coming back to the board finally to get the land development approval. So as you can see, there's many steps along the way that would have to be met. There's many steps along the way where the board would have input and the ability to say yay or nay. And this is just the first step that gets us along, moving along that process. But it's a necessary step to know that we should go forward, expend the funds and energy and so on to go ahead and start doing all of this other work that would be necessary. Now, we've talked about everything except for one thing. What is that? How are we going to fund this, of course, right? When I first came here to Abington over 30 years ago, this was on the dream list for people to have some sort of a center in Crestmont Park. And it's gone on for a long time, and I worked with Commissioner Wayne Luker, and we talked about many different options on this thing. But this is the first time that we're at a point where we think that maybe it's doable, and because of the great success that our leaders from the Police Athletic League have done to raise funds. As you all know, we've been conducting all of these programs without using tax dollars or without using township funds. For all these programs that they had up there, it's been done through fundraising, and that work has been done by some great people like Mr. Lou Klein, our president, who you know, and the person I'm about to introduce to you, who's been absolutely amazing, not only for our township, but certainly amazing for our kids at PAL. And that's Mr. Eric Sussman, who's going to talk to you just a little bit about our endeavor to raise the funds. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Sussman. Really glad to be here for this cause tonight. I'm head of the building committee for the PAL building. Might not be one of my brightest moves, but I actually campaigned and volunteered for this job. So I'm here because it's an act of love. It's a labor of love for what we do. And I'll be short. We intend to build and sustain a PAL building by a collection of individuals and companies that do business or live in our community that have a deep commitment and love for our kids and want to see them do better and excel in the future. And so for that, I represent a number of people on the committee that aren't able to make it here tonight, but you have my commitment to raise the funds. Thanks.
Do you have a budget?
We know that the building, in very preliminary terms, is going to be somewhere in the $3 million range. When we say very preliminary, that is not including the land cost. That's the building cost. But until we go through the full set of plans and development, we don't have a specific number yet.
How many feet is a building? Do you have an idea?
If you want to have specific questions about the building, Van, who spearheaded that, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Okay.
It's estimated around a 15,000 square foot building. And Commissioner Kine, speaking to your matters relative to land development, and I'm just sharing my experience as a 10-year member of the Abington Township Planning Commission. In addition to that, I was 1 year, through your favor, you put me on the zoning board. But also professionally, my background, I'm a registered architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and prior to coming to working for this wonderful employer, I spent the past 25 years developing real estate throughout the Delaware Valley. But specifically, what you're concerned about is the process and the steps towards developing, answering the questions: how much does it cost? What's the timeline? In a nutshell, what PAL is asking right now is to be able to give the ability to invest those monies to answer those hard questions. I did start some preliminary information, but we have to start investing sometimes by hiring a survey to document what the meets and bounds are, to understand the pervious and ground cover, to answer those hard zoning questions. In short order, if we get a favorable response from the governing body, we will be able to answer those very specific questions because they're very detailed. This site is a 19.8 acre site. There has been an initial analysis of it to answer those questions, but at this time, it just might be just a little bit too early to answer those specific questions. But in short order, receiving your favorable response, we will be able to give you those hard answers about the land development process, the timeline, budgets. There's historical information with other civic buildings like this, but it's just too soon for those to answer questions. But we do promise you we will come back with those hard answers.
Has anybody put together a time frame? Like I know there's a lot of moving parts here, especially with fundraising and.
No, we
does anybody
have
have an idea of, going from this point forward when the actual project would see fruition?
I know the organization desperately. It's a long time coming. They want to move with extreme haste, but patience, and moving with deliberate speed. They would like to get started as soon as possible. As soon as possible, if we receive a favorable response, we will start the development process immediately. Immediately means hire a land surveyor to document the exact meets and bounds, look at a building footprint. It's roughly around 15,000 square feet. It might be, the shape may change, but then once you have the building sited, and you know what the footprint is, then you can start developing, what the question is to be asked for the variances. But, I would say probably in about 3 to 4 months, we could be able to start engaging it and with a timeline. So there's been a preliminary timeline that has been established, but we can answer it more directly once we get those professionals on board to answer those questions.
Okay. Okay.
Dan, actually, I have a couple of questions. Two, actually. The engineering plan, that is something that would be, I'm assuming that would be contracted out, just like the surveying and everything, right? That's something that would be contracted out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know, you and Mr. Sussman were talking about the, rough, $3 million estimate, not including land, obviously very preliminary. Any idea what the annual sustainability cost of the building would be? Just the electric bill and the water bill and all that good stuff.
I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
I just wonder, I'm just curious as to...
That will be part of the due diligence. And what we're asking for is just be able to get site approval, site control, so we can do our due diligence to bring that information back to the governing body.
Right. Thank you. Did anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. So I think I forget who, all the different people presenting, I forget who talked about this, but the stormwater and those kinds of things, has the Environmental Advisory Council been involved in this at all?
No, we haven't. I have personally talked to the township engineers on some preliminary conversations as far as the approach. But those will be one of the things that the organization, the PAL organization, will definitely engage.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
A question, I will follow up. I do have a comment, I may reserve. I have a question, I do have a comment, I may reserve that. So my understanding is, would it be fair to say that without this without this approval and the approval of the full Board of Commissioners, you'll still be in kind of a limbo area, not really able to move forward. So this is kind of the trigger piece to allow you all to move forward.
Commissioner, not only would we be in limbo, that we wouldn't proceed any further on that location. Obviously, there's no point in spending money, time, energy, and so on a site that we don't even have a preliminary commitment from the township. So that you're absolutely right. In other words, and again, I know this is difficult, and naturally the board always wants to explore all these possibilities, and that's only natural. But we're only at the first of basically 5 or 6 steps, which you'll have greater commitment all along the way. You'll get more answers all along the way. And it just doesn't make any sense. We started taking a look at those things, and we came up with the conclusion that it doesn't make any sense to even pursue the answers to all of these things until we have the basic agreement that, yes, in principle, and that's really what it is. It's not a commitment on any specifics. It's a commitment only in principle that, yes, if all these other steps are worked out and these things are worked out, that you'd like to allow us to use that land for not only for the building but for all the activities and things that come along with it.
Please. So I understand the concept of PAL having activities. I understand the concept of the surrounding community having activities. Would it be fair to potentially say that in some way, shape, or form, this could be a full township resource for lack of a better term? Is that a possibility? Or is this only...
Commissioner, that's a great question, because that's something that we have discussed and want to work at. It'll be the property of the Police Athletic League. They're going to build it. They're going to run it. They're going to do all those things with it. And those programs are going to take priority. Obviously, the programs for the kids are what it's about, what people are donating for and contributing for. And so that's what is going to take the priority. However, that having been said, we've talked about that obviously, just like we have other facilities that we open up to the neighborhood and to the community, that would certainly be an option for that as well. And in fact, we've already, Van and others have already explored some opportunities with different groups, like senior citizen groups that normally do their activities in the early part of the day and so on. And we usually do these activities in the afternoons after school and so on the weekends. So that would certainly be an opportunity for that to happen. However, it would be a property that is owned by and run by the Police Athletic League.
And in terms of the moving forward with the initial steps to gain the information, as Commissioner Spiegelman said, those individuals that are going to have to be contracted with or hired, what, if any, exposure would the township have financially for those initial costs?
There is no intention to involve the township in any respect in those costs, Commissioner.
Thank you. I have a comment. I'll wait until everybody's finished.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? I actually have another question, but anyone else have any questions? I had it, Chief, I don't know if this question would be for you, but obviously the building as a pretty substantive facility. I know that PAL has employees who make the organization run, and I'm assuming they would be headquartered at this building. Would you conceive of having to hire staff, like a building manager, some kind of superintendent, or do you think you'd make do with the existing PAL staff?
I think that the more days that we're open, the more hours we're open, Commissioner, the more we're going to have to do that, and we've taken that into consideration as far as thinking about what our potential ongoing operational costs would be. Mr. Sussman mentioned to me, and it's a really good point, that we have been sort of a vagabond organization. We've been in 3 different sites and at other people's mercy as far as when it was available and so on in the past. And so this is something that we have looked forward to for a long time, talked about for a long time. Actually looked at a number of different sites. Some of you may remember that there was a period of time, a couple years ago, we were actually looking at a site in Roslyn Park, and that didn't work out for a variety of reasons. And we've looked at a number of different sites and really considered them, and this one just really seems to fit for a lot of reasons, including the fact that of all of the sites we pick up children and transport them to the PAL Center, that the site we pick up more children than any other is at Crestmont Park. So already you have a group of kids that are from that immediate area that are interested in being there for those activities and being provided those opportunities. So that's one of the reasons why that seems to make so much sense to us.
All right, thank you, Chief. I think we'll move quickly into PA1, but Commissioner Jones, did you want to make your comment if nobody else has that? Oh, Commissioner Hecker.
I don't know if this is more appropriate now or later, but let me just, so first of all, as Officer Gillespie mentioned, my son participated in the camp last year. It was awesome. My younger son will be doing it again this summer, so I'm a huge supporter of PAL, and so I think the community benefit that's provided is inspiring. So the question I have is that we're in a unique situation as a board because technically we have a nonprofit organization which is coming before us for an application to enter into an agreement with the township, but it's a nonprofit that has the involvement and deep commitment of a number of folks who are employed by the township. So I don't know if this is a question for the solicitor or the manager, but are there other protections and measures that we need to be thinking about so that as we go forward here, it's viewed as a fair and even-handed process so that we get to the right outcome?
That's a good question.
The answer is there might be. This is not something that we've been asked to get too deep into at this point in time. From what we understand, this is a preliminary step by the township if it's approved this evening. But we will need to look at all aspects of this. Some of the comments that I was asking Mike Lefevre tonight were about the incorporation of PAL and about a few other issues, and we're going to need to be looking at that, all of those issues as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm supportive. I just want to make sure as we go through here we do this correctly.
Can I just
and we will
follow up on that?
Commissioner Schreiber.
Solicitor Clark, can I follow up on that? So are you recommending that if we do this preliminary step tonight, are you going to find out the information you need to find out before next Thursday? Or is it we have to go through the preliminary, the two votes next Thursday as well before you find out what you need to find out?
I don't think anything prevents the board from taking the vote tonight and then taking the vote again next Thursday. Nothing that we're going to determine in the next 8 days is going to impact, I think, what you're doing by sort of, as the chief said, this initial step of allowing them to see whether or not this is viable. We're going to need to talk to them about how they're going to do their fundraising. We're going to need to talk to them about various aspects of this project, and I don't think that'll be impacted. I think you can move forward tonight and again on Thursday night, and then that will almost sort of be the kickoff for the PAL group to begin getting their financing in place, looking at other things, and it'll be the kickoff for our office to begin working with them on the legal issues as it relates to the township.
Okay. I know a couple of folks have questions. Commissioner Kalinowski, did you have a question?
Carol.
Oh, Commissioner Gillespie had a question.
Oh, you want me to ask? We both wanted to ask. How did Hunters Soccer Club, how did they, because they built a building in a park in my ward, how did they go about this process? Was it started the same way we're asking PAL or PAL's asking us to follow through with this?
Pretty much, Commissioner. I mean, we have agreements of understanding with a number of other organizations, the Ardsley North Hills Athletic Association, the Rochester Board of Managers, the Raiders Football Organization, and others have buildings on township property that they are responsible for maintaining. And we have agreements of understanding with all of them. And so this is obvious. It's much smaller scale than what PAL is asking about, but it's still a very similar situation. And so especially for the Hunters one, which was a full-service building, yes, that had to go through all the same process.
Okay. So to start out now, just they're asking us for
they can get started.
They can get started on this, and I think it's great. They would not all be here tonight if we weren't here to have us support them on this. I have two sons that are involved in PAL, and they're members of PAL, and it's a great organization. We have moved from two different buildings, and I think they've outgrown both buildings with the participation in the neighborhood and the community. I think this is a great idea.
Commissioner Gillespie?
And actually, I was thinking, thank you, I was thinking, the people that you're talking about, they are employed by the township, but they're volunteering. So I think we're allowed to volunteer anywhere we want. So if you're putting a building, just happens to be on the township property, they're still volunteering. They're not getting paid to show up there. So they're volunteers. Big word. Thank you for volunteering, all of you.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Kalinowski brought up one good point. The Hunter Building, is that owned by the township? I mean, I think I remember they did all the construction, but it's actually a building that's still owned by the township at this point.
As I understand the agreement, the building is, once it's built, it's owned by the township, but the responsibility for the maintenance of the building.
I get that. But the building is actually owned by, in this situation, the township's not going to own the building. That's going to be owned by PAL.
That's why, you have to have a solicitor.
Right. So, my suggestion, and along the lines of what Commissioner Schreiber said, is in the motion that you're about to read. The one thing that I think is missing in here, it says final approval of the use will be dependent on zoning, land use approvals, the financial viability of the project, and community support. I think we should also add in there that there's an acceptable lease agreement between the township or whatever type of agreement, because that's not in here, and that should also be one of the steps within the process. And then the last thing, it says at the end, attainable and additional input is received from surrounding residents, and I would also put in there that from the Board of Commissioners, too.
Solicitor Clark, I'm assuming that that's pretty easy if
we
Commissioner
haven't read
Klein
the
makes a
motion
motion.
yet, so but along the lines of what we're
He
talking
can
about,
amend, it can be amended.
You
thus.
certainly can, and we can make sure the motion is changed before next Thursday.
Okay.
And last comment would be, I don't think there's anybody up here that's not supportive of PAL. We also have to be concerned about the township's position and make sure that if we are going to lease the space to, in a sense, what is a private organization, obviously very well connected to the township itself, that the township is protected. So,
right. And certainly, I think Solicitor Clark, that this is, if this passes tonight and next week, that'll be your cue to break out the legal books, which I'm assuming you have a lot of.
And my last comment would be in the process of doing this, I would hope to find a way to work with PAL to try to broaden its appeal. I know on my side, especially in my ward, and I think in a lot of areas on the eastern side of the township, PAL is either not known, not used. Now, it could be a product of just the difference of population from one side to the other, but I think that's something that needs to be explored in a greater detail, because I think especially if you're going to add all these programs, which I think is fantastic, just to have a place to go and play basketball or beat up on cops playing basketball, whatever it may be. Maybe you should have pickleball too. But I think with all the other stuff that you're planning for the new facility, I think getting a greater amount of the population involved and aware of the services that PAL may be putting into this building should bleed out to larger portions of the community, which I don't think it has yet. Thank you.
Before we move right into the agenda item, anything else? I know, Commissioner Jones, you had a comment you wanted to make. Is any other questions from the board? You're going to hold off to the agenda item. All right. Well, and then I think we're going to go ahead and get right into the agenda item, because then we'll be able to open up for public comment. So this is our agenda item.
Could the public ask some questions as you had the opportunity to ask questions?
That's actually exactly why I want to move into this, because that can come in the pub. This is why I wanted to segue directly into.
But you're taking it so that all the public comment is at the end of the meeting.
No, the agenda item hasn't
There's
been
public
brought
comment.
forward yet.
Forgive me for being unclear about this.
On this
There's
issue?
public comment on PA1 before the vote, and then at the end of the meeting, there's public comment on anything in the public affairs family.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, this is item PA1, the PAL building site approval. This is a motion to support Crestmont Park as the future location of the Abington PAL Activity Building for fundraising purposes. Final approval of the use will be dependent on zoning and land use approvals, the financial viability of the project, and community support. The exact location of any building on the property will be determined after fundraising targets are attainable and additional input is received from surrounding residents, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I think Solicitor Clark is going to say something.
With the additional portion of a lease agreement being entered into between the township and PAL, as is indicated in step 2, I think that's what Commissioner Klein's amendment was. So we'll add that in for next Thursday.
Okay, so, do you want to start with the amendment and then
No, I think
discuss,
we just
okay.
kind of stuck it into what you said, and then we'll make it a little cleaner for next Thursday.
I would have taken more careful notes on what Commissioner Klein said, but he said a lot of things.
Well, I would also say at the end of the motion, it says from surrounding residents, and I would also put in there Board of Commissioners.
Yes. Solicitor Clark, you're good to go for updating this.
Manager LaFever does. He writes everything
Someone
down.
who isn't me has this under control. That's very good. All right. Well, I know obviously we've heard a lot of questions and comments, but first, questions or comments from board members on the committee. Board members in general. Commissioner Jones, did you want to do after the public comment? Okay. Township staff and residents. As always, name and address, please.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So my question is that this is unusual, as was brought up. The Hunter Soccer Club was not owned by Hunter Soccer and should not be. And so I'm going to just back up once and just say that my first inclination would be to reduce the footprint, that instead of having two buildings, which is the pool complex and then this complex, I believe that the two should be incorporated, that a community center complex could be incorporated, and PAL could easily lease the building and obviously the land with it. But the complication of leasing the land when PAL owns the building, there is no way to undo that lease when they own the building, except to have the building bought by Abington Township, which is, another thing fraught with problems down the road. This is being done backwards. If we have people that care about the kids in the community and the seniors as well, and in fact, as was mentioned, every segment of the community should be able to use this. Many of us have found doors closed when we ask to use public spaces for meetings about tax issues and issues in our township. So there is a wonderful place to have a community center there, needed by those residents, and it would be fantastic. It should not be a private thing built on public lands, especially in a part of the township that has so few public lands, so little green space. If you look at the green space map in the township, you'll find the east side covered with green and the west side with very little. And so one of the things that we do not want to do is reduce green space more. So incorporating that with the pool building would actually allow all of those activities to unite nicely in a community center way. And these same people could fundraise for what would be a wonderful community center, and PAL could lease an ample section of that building to do all of the wonderful things that they want to do. So I think this is being done backwards, and the scary thing is to see them own part of our public lands, because I don't know how you'd undo that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Commissioner Jones, I believe you wanted to say something.
Two things. First of all, Mr. Clark, the way I've always learned to work with attorneys is you decide what you want to do, go to your attorney and say, tell me how to do this legally without getting into trouble. I think that as long as we pursue that course of action, that will protect not only the township, it will protect the residents, and as a residual, it will protect PAL and anyone else who may use it. Now to my comments. Covers two things that I feel kind of bad, because quite frankly in public safety, when we heard about Chief Kelly's presentation, I wanted to speak on it then, and I think it's more apropos now. The reality is that while we have a lot of benefits and we've seen a lot of progress with statistics and other things, there are many who would believe that there are fragments and portions of our communities, of our country, that are fractured, that are broken, and I think the events of past weeks and past months have shown that to be true. Quite frankly, there are times in many communities where I don't feel safe, and I'm sure that there are others of various races, creeds, that would join me in that. Looking at different ways that we can bring down statistics is one thing. I believe that until we get to the point, as Officer Gillespie said, that we can figure out that it's not Officer Gillespie or Commissioner Jones or this kid over here, but it's Roger and Larry, that we are all people. That's how we solve this issue. And the Police Athletic League, the programs that are put forth here, is how we start to get it done. And we do that with kids, and we do that with open and honest dialogue. Last Friday, we had a peace meeting, so to speak. I'm using the wrong word. And people committed that they would be honest about issues of race and culture and other things, even when it's uncomfortable. Quite frankly, a lot of times we sit up here and we are politic and we don't get uncomfortable. Having open opportunities like this center would allow our kids to be uncomfortable in a safe environment so that we can actually start to create a better community. I think that we need to come together and say that we will do this, that it needs to be done, and then we go to our solicitor and figure out how to get it done legally. And if, to our residents' point, there's some issues, then we get through those issues in a way, because right now, I don't want to see this community become as fractured as others have. So thank you very much. And my last thing is a shameless plug. I believe that Muay Thai Wing Chun Kung Fu should be taught at the Police Athletic League. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. There are the comments. We're going to...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just one thought. Fire Marshal Clark brought a really interesting concept to me that I thought the board might be interested in, about the issue of property and property that is eventually deeded back to the township and so on. So if you're interested, Mr. Chairman, Fire Marshal could possibly enlighten all of us about that.
I'm always interested. Hello, Fire Marshal Clark.
Commissioners, Ken Clark, Fire Marshal Abington. As you know, we have 5 fire companies in the township, and they own their buildings. They also own the apparatus. Funding comes from both the township through the fire tax and also through donations. In each company's bylaws, there is a section that basically says that in the event that the fire company goes defunct for any reason, all property owned by the fire company reverts back to the township. It's a pretty simple solution to the problem that the resident brought up.
I was not aware of that, Marshal Clark. Thank you very much. That's quite germane. Commissioner Klein.
You mentioned that the buildings and the apparatus is the property owned by the fire companies, or is that owned by the township?
Well, the property, the buildings, the apparatus, everything.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Fire Marshal Clark. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and vote. All those in favor of PA1?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, PA1 has passed. And since that's our only agenda item, any commissioners, either on the committee or in general, have any public affairs related comments? Township staff, and now we will start the public comment period for public affairs. As always, name and address, 3 minutes, the usual drill.
Thanks for the reminder. I actually still forget after 10 years of this. Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. That was actually good to hear. That's an interesting thing, and I would like to see if we certainly have that in the lease, if not other thoughts that may come from other residents and other areas of expertise. As for the comment about we turn to our solicitor to keep us out of trouble, I don't think that $5 million lawsuit would support that. So we've got an issue here that I wanted to mention before when we were talking about parks and recreation. And I've been before you many times talking about the Boy Scout Preserve, Nature Preserve. It's called both things. So I'm not sure whether the Boy Scouts have some part in it. But it seems to be being neglected almost on purpose, overtly neglected. And so I began to ask around to try and find out what other people thought. I was directed ultimately to the trust, the deed of trust, which has come up before when we had hunting just a few years back. The trust deed came up. I'm sure that Mr. Wendell is pretty familiar with it. And if he's not, he certainly should be, because when the hunting came up, it was named directly as a violation of the trust, because the trust says that the purpose is, and for no other purpose, including hunting, fishing, recreation, the Township of Abington, when necessary, may construct the intercepting sanitary sewer or storm sewer without impairing this grant, but for the purpose of carrying sewage or water. But in no event shall construct any service building or any sewage disposal plant upon said premises. So we've done that too. And we've also just violated the trust again by putting in a driveway that is not only contrary to the trust, but contrary to the agreement with the neighbors that the township put together. And it's been brought to the attention of the township. And when something's brought so many times to the attention and the township still continues to violate these regulations, one can only surmise that this is on purpose. And the purpose might have something to do with how things revert when the trust has been violated. And I would demand right now that the township read the trust and get back in compliance with the trust. This is an incredibly valuable piece of nature and environment.
Just FYI, your 3 minutes have expired. If you could wrap up in the next 30 seconds, I'd appreciate that.
An extremely important piece of land. It has many, many tall oaks that support as many as 500 species of wildlife, and that the disappearing township green space generally, and I would like not to think that this is on purpose, but it cannot seem any other way when I look at what's been done. Okay, and since you didn't allow me to say that at the Parks and Rec section, may I just say also that recently, I think all of you, that records were withheld at great expense. And I am constantly charged with costing the township money with my questions. Okay. I could give you a list, the length of my arm, of what it is costing the township.
We don't have time. You're now past the 4-minute mark. So your comments are absolutely noted. Thank you very much. With that, the Public Affairs meeting is adjourned.